is great. I've waited for this day for a long time because I get to steal a line that Larry used for years when he received a certainly nice introduction, and say it to him, which is that I wish my parents would have been here for that. My father would have appreciated it, and my mother would have believed it. Thank you, Larry. My great-great-grandmother emigrated to this country in 1889. She had 4 children. They lived in Eastern Europe. And they had actually, as we understand it, a very good life there until the pogroms started, and they started treating Jews in Eastern Europe quite differently and taking away their ability to sustain their economic livelihood. And so her husband got on a boat to this country in 1888, and then she got with her oldest child, a son, and then she came with the 3 little ones in 1889. And we found her journal about 2 years ago. Incredible that it had kind of gotten lost, but we found it, and I read it. And the story of her passage here is incredible. They traveled steerage class. They were immensely sick. There wasn't a lot of food. There wasn't always water. And she wrote that the thing that upset her the most is that her children got on that boat immaculately clean and got off that boat 2.5 weeks later, filled with filth and vermin. And so you ask, why does anyone do that? Why do they leave a life, even if it's changing, and take a trip that they knew would be like that, to a land where you don't speak the language, where you don't have a job, where you don't have the right education? And the answer is quite simple. It's why immigrants still come to this country. It's why we are proud to be Americans. It's what Larry just spoke of so beautifully and eloquently, as he always does, which is the promise of equal opportunity for all. I don't want to understate what this country has achieved in that promise, because we are still the symbol of the world for that promise. And I am so grateful to my great-grandmother for that voyage, as so many people in this room are grateful to their ancestors who made a similar trip to get them to this land, which has truly unbelievable opportunity for some of us. I think while we don't understate that, we also have to recognize that we have real work to do towards what will be true equality. That no matter how much true equality we have been able to achieve as a society, no matter how much some of us have been able to do, we're still not there. We don't always have true equality or true opportunity for women. I've been talking about this a lot with the publication of my book. But the blunt truth, and get ready for this, it's a shocker, men still run the world. And I'm just not sure that's going that well. I happened to be in London last week, where they buried Margaret Thatcher. She was elected 34 years ago. She was the only female head of state the day she was elected. Fast forward 34 years, 3.5 decades, there are 17 female head of states in the world out of hundreds of countries. Women have 1/5 of the parliament seats anywhere in the world. And there is not a single country, ours included, that doesn't have 95% of its top companies run by men. Not a single country in the world. We don't always encourage leadership in women. Leadership is not something that we think of as naturally for women. I've been telling people on my book tour that every time you're about to call your little daughter or a little girl bossy, you need to say instead, my daughter has executive leadership skills. The thing about stereotypes and bias is that we can recognize them and we can change them. We can start encouraging leadership in girls. We can start recognizing girls as having executive leadership skills. And we can create equal opportunity for all. Even more fundamentally than the challenges faced by gender are the challenges faced by economics in this country. We do not have equal opportunity for all of our children. If my great-great-grandmother were going to think about that voyage today, it might be a slightly harder decision to make. 8% of the low-income students in this country graduate from college. In the US, if you were born to the bottom fifth of earners, there is a 42% likelihood that you will still be there as an adult, 42%. And what I find most upsetting, and I just learned over the last few years, is that if you were born to that bottom fifth in the UK, a society we think of as more hierarchical, more conservative, more traditional, with less social mobility, there is a 30% likelihood you will be there as an adult. We now, across many metrics, probably not all, but across many, have lower social mobility than Great Britain, a country many of the ancestors of people in this room left to have social mobility. This is not just an issue of equality, even though equality is so important. This is an issue that challenges our economy. The increasing gap between rich and poor, our inability to educate all of our children. The global economy is moving quickly. Companies, countries become increasingly competitive. Our future is dependent upon our ability to educate our children, and not just some of our children, all of our children. Regardless of where they were born, regardless of how they got here, regardless, in my view, of their immigration status, regardless of their gender, and regardless of their income level. If we want to be the country we want to be, if we want to be America in the next century, we need to start educating all of our children. And just as we need to look our gender problems in the face and start talking about them more openly, again, even more fundamentally, we need to look these problems in the face and start fixing them. Here in Silicon Valley, I think we give an enormous amount to the world, but I'm not sure everything about what we do is always understood. I think people from the outside think it's about technology, that what we do is based on technology, and it is. That's really important. But every single one of us in this room who's ever worked at or started, the great people like Scott Cooker here, started a tech company, we know something, which is that it's not about technology, it's about talent. Facebook was not built just on a great technology. Facebook was built by people. Some of the most important are here tonight. Chris Cox, Sam Lessin, Matt Kohler, Brett Taylor. These people built that technology and built Facebook. We have considerable challenges in Silicon Valley, and that challenge goes back to the educational challenge we're here to address, which is that we don't have enough talent for our companies. Every single person in this room who works at a tech company will tell you, if you ask, that they want to hire more engineers, that our country is not producing nor allowing to work here the talent we need to continue to grow what is the fastest growing part of our economy. We're not doing enough of this for women. If you just got as many women into computer science as men, if they went in at the same rate, that one intervention alone would actually close the gap between the engineers this country needs and the engineers we are allowed to employ. That one intervention. Similarly, if we change the educational trajectory of the people in our neighborhoods, of low-income students, we would similarly close that gap. And it would make all the difference, not just for our companies, but for our economy. What is true in technology, that it's all about talent, is just as true in education. No one knows this better than Wendy Kopp. Wendy Kopp is, in my view, one of, if not the single best leader in our country. It was on my bucket list to meet her, and I worked hard to do it about 8-9 years ago, and she's become a dear friend. She graduated from college 2 years before I did, and she was at Princeton, and she wrote the thesis that became Teach for America, and I worshiped her from afar, as did, I think, my whole generation. And it was only when I got to know her that I actually appreciated that I had underestimated what she was doing. She noticed that demographics were shifting, in fact, partially because women had more choice in the workforce, that the talent that was going into education was changing and changing dramatically. And she said, in college, what all of us took me years to understand was that it was all about talent. And she set out to attract the very best people in this country into education. She did it. Fast forward 20-something years, not so many, Wendy, we're not really that old. This year, 57,000 students applied to Teach for America. At the most selective 67 schools in our country, 7% of seniors apply. 7%, including 8% of the seniors working who graduate from the Ivy League. Along with this, she's achieved diversity of application. 42% identify as people of color, 51% received Pell Grants. Wendy has shown us what we all believe in our hearts to be true. There is talent from all backgrounds, there is talent from all genders, there is talent from all schools, and the very best people want to work on the most fundamental problems. Not only has Wendy and this amazing organization so many of you work at succeeded in attracting the best talent to education, what's even more incredible is that TFA is succeeding in keeping them in education. On the way into TFA, 15% are considering a career in education. They don't want to be educators, they want to be part of what is a movement, a very prestigious movement to join, where they believe they can give back for 2 years and learn a lot for themselves. On the way out, 2/3 work in education. 7,500 members of this core alumni are still in the classroom, and 1/3 of the rest do work related to low-income communities. These are the people that are leading our schools, becoming superintendents, running for local office, including school boards. TFA produces more founders and leaders of educational organizations by far than any other organization. And these are exceptional leaders. I have the privilege of knowing many of them, so many do you. KIPP, not just the founders, but the majority of the principals and 40% of the teachers are TFA alums. Wendy already mentioned Rocket Ship. CEO Preston Smith founded it with my friend John Danner, and more of their principals and teachers comes from TFA. Across leading technical organizations, across educational organizations that are working on technology, across advocacy, when you look around, so many of the leaders of what is a dire reform movement in this country come from Teach for America. Underlying this is what Wendy told me she really set out to achieve. It wasn't just getting the best people into education, and it wasn't just getting them to try to reform education. It was changing their mindset. If you survey Americans and you ask them the top 3 reasons for low educational outcomes in low-income communities, they will say lack of student motivation, lack of parental engagement, home life issues. They will say, because they believe, that these students from these families may not be able to learn. On the way out of Teach for America, 2 years later, if you survey those alums and ask them, what are the top 3 reasons for low educational outcomes in low-income communities? They will say teacher quality, principal quality, and academic expectations for kids. These children can learn, but we need to believe in them. We need to believe they can learn. We need to help them believe it, and we need to give them the education which enables them to learn. From a problem that we thought we couldn't solve, TFA has led a movement which has shown all of us unequivocally, beyond a shadow of a doubt, not only can we solve this problem, but because we know we can, we must. Every single child can learn. I think we all thank you, Wendy, for that lesson. TFA is like a social network. I'm very fond of social networks, the old-fashioned kind. We can believe that it's not just TFA and these alums and these amazing people in this room who are doing so much. We are so grateful to each of you. But we have to believe that all of us All of us are responsible for providing educational opportunity. In Silicon Valley, we believe in making the world a better place. We pride ourselves on this, and we pride ourselves on meritocracy. And we have to notice that it is children in our neighborhoods, not other people's neighborhoods, our neighborhoods, half a mile from where almost anyone in this room lives a child who is not getting the education they deserve. Half a mile from almost any of the homes any of us, again, live in, lives a child who has an 8% chance of graduating from college. TFA in our area is making such an important contribution. We have 425 core members in the Bay Area, working on bringing 200 more this summer to this area. That's the work that the money that's raised tonight supports. And I just want to join everyone else in thanking every single one of you for this support, because it is so important and so needed. I want to thank Emily, another amazing woman who has led Teach for America in the Bay Area for 5 years. We are the social network that knows a few things. We are tied together by the belief that all children can learn, that it is only fair and just that all children do learn in this country, and that it is not just our opportunity, but it's our responsibility to make that happen. Because this community, we have too much. We represent too much to the world to let this happen in our neighborhood and in our country. We know that regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of socioeconomic background, every child can learn, and we can help every child learn. I just did a book tour over the last month, and in every city I went to, I had girls from KIPP come. Wendy arranged this, of course. I always go to Wendy with all my educational questions, but Wendy helped me arrange this, and girls from KIPP, current girls in junior high school and high school, came to every book event I did in every city. And I would meet with them before they all read my book, and I would talk to them about their lives. And what I heard are some of the things you heard tonight, and some of the things we all know to be true, which is that these kids face an uphill battle. One young girl told me that she had a really bad month at school because another one of her relatives was shot and killed on the streets of our cities. One young girl told me that she didn't know what to do because she was fighting with her parents a lot. And I said, well, why are you fighting with your parents? And she said, well, because they don't want me to study, because they need me to take care of my siblings. There are 3 babies in my house, and they need to be taken care of, and they don't want me to study. Normally, a lot of the kids I meet, when they're fighting with their parents, I tell them their parents are right. I'm not sure this time, but I know that that girl faces choices that I didn't face. And that girl needs every bit of help and support we can give her, especially and starting with a truly great and dedicated teacher. A teacher who believes she can learn, a teacher who knows she can learn, and a teacher who's going to do all she can to make sure that girl can learn. What I was most taken with all the girls from KIPP I met in every city, is that there was one thing that was common throughout them. Some of them had more self-confidence than others. I made every single one speak, and with some of them it was easier than others. Some of them kind of sat at the table, and some of them sat at the side, so I would wave them over to the table. And all of them were facing difficult situations, some much harder. But there was one thing that was true of all of them, which is they wanted to give back. They wanted not just to make something of their lives for themselves and their families, so they would no longer worry about some of the things the rest of us take for granted every day and every week, but they wanted to make something of their lives to give back to others. We are all here tonight because we believe in them. We believe that every single child in this country should get the education that would make my great-grandmother get on that boat. That would make all of us continue to be proud to be Americans. Thank you all.